Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ray, and welcome to the RayWenderlich.com podcast. In this podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the latest app development tech talk. Now, here are your hosts, Dru Freeman and Nishant Shrivastava.
Thanks, Ray. This is the RayWenderlich.com podcast. Welcome to episode 5 for season 11. Now, this episode was recorded on Friday, the 15th of January, 2021, for release on the 3rd of February. As always, this episode was sponsored by the language COBOL and the number... Wait, COBOL? Are you kidding? All right. I'm Dru Freeman, here with my now confused co-host, Nishant Shrivastava.
Thanks, Dru. In this episode, we have with us Joe Birch, who has also contributed to the book Living by the Code. Joe is a senior Android engineer at Buffer and also a GDE for Android, Google Assistant, Flutter, and Google Play.
Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And no, I did not warn Nishant at all about how the sponsorship was going to run on that today.
Yeah, it caught me for a moment then as well.
we like to have some fun with the show. It's not all very strict and all of that. I mean, now you're a podcaster too. You understand that and have some appreciation for how do you keep it going from show to show.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we run a little podcast at work, Buffer Overflow podcast. So I know how it is.
Why don't you give yourself a plug? Tell us about Buffer Overflow.
Yeah, so it was actually my colleague who kicked it off, and I co-host it with him. And yeah, we just chat about anything that's going on at work, like whether it's we're big advocates of remote work, so we like to talk about remote work and then things inside Buffer, and we try and pull in like a guest from within Buffer for each episode and just chat to them about maybe something they're working on or something they've experienced or something they want to share. So just kind of a place to share learnings and with the outside world, I guess.
And I'm really looking forward to talking to you about Buffer because there's just so many things that sort of make it sound like the idyllic place to work. But I want to start because, as you can see, the tiger is practicing safe plush. How are you doing with lockdown? I know that the UK has recently moved back to tier 5, I think.
Yeah. Those tier numbers are going up, but yeah, I mean, we went back into lockdown on the 30th of December, and we saw it coming. So I feel like used to it by now. Like I think it was last March we went into first lockdown, and since then it's just been kind of like going around in circles. So just used to it. So what can you do?
So what was fun before you were secluded in a house?
Oh, it's for me, it's like the conferences and the travel, and co-working. So I work from home. I work remotely, so I work from home all week. And I used to go to the co-working space every Friday to work with some friends. I really miss that, and I really miss the traveling as well. And the conferences, like that was a huge part of my year. Like I'd travel like maybe almost once a month and meet people and see old friends, and I really miss that. So yeah, that's for me. And now obviously not being able to do that is there's people worse off. So I'm just grateful that I managed to stay healthy and safe so far.
So were you remote before Buffer, or was Buffer sort of your dive into real remote work?
Yeah, Buffer was chucked me in at the deep end, I guess you could say. My last company, if we needed to for some reason, it had to be a special reason. We had to ask for permission and so on. So it's quite the opposite. So going from that to Buffer was quite a jump, and took a little bit to get used to it, I guess. There was a lot of people I talked to at Buffer beforehand to learn about best ways to approach it and so on. And yeah, but I think I settled in well. I like my own company, and I'm quite, I just like getting heads down in my work, which I think a lot of people do. So the remote work environment works quite well for me.
Now, how long have you been with Buffer?
It's come up to, it will be 5 years in July. So about just over 4.5 years, I think. So
the lockdown for work the lockdown didn't really affect work at all.
yeah. This is the thing. Like my friends and my family are like, nothing's changed for you, Joe. Like, you didn't really go out anyway, and you didn't go out for work. So, yeah, I think the only thing for me is like the social aspect of not being able to see friends. But in terms of work, it's the same, and just doing the thing I was doing before, working from home. Not being able to co-work is the only difference there. But so well prepared for it, I guess you could say.
Do you want to talk about Buffer and a little about what they do?
Yeah, totally. So Buffer are a social media company. So we offer tools for scheduling, analytics, and customer engagement. We have a suite of tools that companies and small businesses can use to interact with people through social networks. So we kind of bring all those social networks together, like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and you can sort of manage and schedule for all those networks in one place.
Is it predominantly a UK based company, or do you have people from all around?
All around, like I can't remember the exact number of like different countries, but literally dotted all over the world, probably in every part of the world. I think we have someone. So like, for example, the mobile team's quite small. It's about 6 people. But we have me in the UK, we have someone in Germany, a couple of people in the US, and then someone in India and someone in Asia, in Taiwan as well. So the mobile team's quite spread out.
That's got to make positioning the time zone for a meeting very tricky.
Yeah, it does. Like the team as a whole does not have a meeting that's synchronous. Mobile team is really an async team. So every communication is done through Slack or messaging boards. Sometimes we leave videos for each other. So you really have to lean into that async nature, which I think is good because being a remote company, I think that's important to do anyway. So we kind of it's a good opportunity for us to really lean into that.
Yeah, I'm in a company that has gone completely remote. Obviously, like many other companies, for COVID. I am predominantly a remote developer myself, and there seems to be that understanding one has to learn about turnaround for response time. That because there's an asynchronous nature to it, you can't just say, "Are you there?" and expect an immediate response. And I can tell the team members who are used to remote from the team members who are not used to remote, from that concept of, I'm going to schedule you for a meeting in 10 minutes. And it's like, no, that doesn't work for remote developers.
Yeah.
One of the companies I was working at, they couldn't understand remote working, as Dru is already explaining about. For them, it's mostly about like, I need you in 5 minutes, and then you have to be in the call. And I guess once this pandemic has come through, people have understood that that's not how remote work works. There's so much variance here in time and everything. And I guess that's why I think more companies are embracing remote work. And more importantly, I also think that Buffer was doing this for some time. Like, I think probably, as you said, like you've been there for 5 years, but more than that also. But do you think that this trend will continue forward, and more or less that would Buffer be the one kind of like leading on all the different strategies here? Because there's a lot of things happening at Buffer, right, regarding remote work, which maybe you could also talk about.
Yeah. Buffer have been remote. I think it's maybe over 10, almost the whole time Buffer's been around. Most of it has been remote. And yeah, there's a lot. It's a big shift, like for a company to go from, like when Buffer made the shift, they were quite small, but for these larger companies to convert to remote work, it's a huge process change. Like literally the way you do things change massively. And I think that's like, you can't just take the things you do in an office and try and recreate it, like, recreate that in a remote environment. Like, oh, let's have loads of meetings on Zoom. Like, but because that's not asynchronous, is it? It goes back to that issue of needing people to be in places at certain times. But yeah, I think Buffer do share, like, Buffer is naturally a very transparent company, and our blog and various other social media sites that we're on, we do share a lot of content around remote work and the things we do and the things we try, and even the things we've like failed at, and any kind of learnings that we have. And we've always done that, and I think that's probably been beneficial to quite a few people in this time. And I hope it continues to be. And on the subject of like remote work continuing, I really hope it does. I know a lot of companies are switching to remote, like even some of the bigger names, like I think Twitter, Square, and probably more that I can't remember right now, have gone out and said, yep, you can work from home now for the rest of the time. So just waiting for some of the bigger players like Google and so on to make that jump as well, which would be really, again, they're such big companies, so it's a big shift. But I think it's cool to see some companies making that move and making that commitment.
So before we get into some of the transparency that is really unbelievable with Buffer, I want to talk about the discipline and how you structure a day. And I know you talked about it in the book, but I really want to focus in on it, because with that asynchronous nature, it can be very easy to just sort of wander off when work is light. So how do you structure it, and how do you discipline it to stick with that general structure, if you have one?
Yeah, I try to structure my day. I find it's quite structured. Like I have my working hours are the same every day, like I think I do like 9 to 5:30 every day. And when I first started working remotely, people were like really surprised, because I literally just stayed. I didn't move. I stayed where I was living, and I was just working the same hours I was working when I was working in an office. And I remember people were like, "Oh, you could work wherever you want, and you're just staying in the same place." I think a creature of habit. But yeah, my day, 9 till 5:30, and I usually start my day off by So I'm quite into bullet journaling. I got into it like last year, and I kind of just set my whole day out in the morning, and set what I want to do for that day and what I want to achieve, kind of like a to-do list essentially. And that sets my day out and what I'm gonna do for the day. So I tend to I don't often have moments in the day where I'm like, oh, I've got nothing to do, or when work's light. And if that does happen, or if that has happened, then usually for me, that's like an opportunity to have a little break, or maybe go for a walk, or do a bit of light reading. I think that's one of the wonders of working from home, is like work becomes less about clocking in and doing your hours, and there's a lot more trust involved. Like a Buffer, it's kind of like no one's checking your hours, no one's logging your time. Like as long as as long as work's being done and the things that need to be done are being done, then I don't do this, but I could probably wrap up my day, and I could probably do a heads down 9 to 3 and probably sign off then if I wanted to. And I'm pretty sure no one would ask questions. Because the work would be like, as long as the work's done, the work's done.
I love the term that you use off, where you say, I switch off.
Yeah. I'm really big believer of that. And I think that leans into the trying to help our team be asynchronous. Like, because if I don't switch off, if I'm checking Slack in the evening or replying to things, it's like, that's not helping my team, because I'm there, and it's not going to help people be independent and help the team be asynchronous. Because like, if I start appearing on Slack at 8 p.m, then that's going to feel normal for Joe to be online at 8 p.m. And someone might think, oh, I can ping Joe because he's sometimes online at this time. So I really like to switch off, and that's it. If I know that if there was something really wrong and if there was a fire, then I'd get pinged on either like a PagerDuty or something, which is our like instant reporting tool. So I know that if I'm needed, I'll be reached out to. But anything else is not, I'm sure, is not urgent.
I don't know if it's the same in the UK as it is in the States, where we have two different types of jobs. We have exempt and non-exempt, where the exempt jobs basically means, well, you're expected to be here 40 hours, but we basically own you whenever we need you. And the non-exempt are the ones where you're plugging 40 hours, and beyond that, you would be getting overtime if you ran over. So yeah, I understand that concept from my position of I plug in and I plug out, but I also know that at a moment's notice, the phone can ring, and that may be the end of my weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only time that I've been pinged to come online when it's out of my hours, I think it's only happened once in the 4.5 years. And that was a Friday. It was actually a Friday about an hour after I signed out, and there was an issue, and I hopped on and I only worked for an hour and fixed it, put a release out, and that was it. And that was only once, so I don't mind that. It's not like it's a regular occurrence.
Well, that's it. I'm going to apply for buffer.
I think in Germany it's even better. So as Dru was mentioning about 40 hours a week, that's something that we also have. It's like a legal binding that you have to work 40 hours as 40 hours, and you should. No one can force you to work more than that, right? So that basically, I think this is something that I prefer now more. Is that at 6 p.m. or something, people just close their laptop, and this is their end of work day. There's like switching off thing. And then this is your after work life. Like basically, if you want to go to a bar or something, meet friends, or like just hang out with some people. Before pandemic, yes, that's what you could do. But as of now, even like when you are at home, you just shut down at like 6 p.m. or whatever your last clocking out time is. And it kind of works out. I think that's something that I think it's a Germany thing or something that I've noticed, that no one is actually expecting you to be available after 6, even if there's like a fire or something. Maybe they will call you up if it's like really bad, but otherwise it's always the next day. Like it's not going to be taking care of that thing.
I've been at the pub I've been at the pub all evening. I don't know if you want me to code right now.
I can do, but I can't promise it'll be pretty.
on call, like, or saying that I'm not gonna be making this good. But one important thing that maybe I also want to bring this up is that you mentioned something about switching out, but like maybe sometimes that you get a ping or something and then you work. But what I've also maybe noticed in my personal experience has been that if you start going and start accepting these like after work hours calls or like pings, then it also affects your team members who also probably have to start doing that much, right? And I think maybe you can talk more about this because you're doing more of this thing in general. But this is something that I've noticed, and some of my friends have mentioned this to me, that they said that if this person started working 2 hours later after the working hours finished, then it is an expectation now others would also work more 2 hours more after the work hour finishes for them.
Okay, yeah, I get what you mean. So yeah, like if I came online and I had to fix an issue, like I think this is what you're getting at. Like my manager said, "Oh, make sure you take the time back yourself. So maybe start work later, a couple of hours on Monday." And I've seen that happen a few times, like in the company or in my team. Like if someone's had to come online for something, or they've had to hang around to finish something that was like super urgent, then the time is given back. Like rather than expecting it to be even in terms of someone else working more, like you're kind of given that time back because you've had to sacrifice that time, which is, I guess, a nice way of doing it, because your time is not your company's time.
That's a good approach, I would say.
So we talked about the transparency at Buffer, and obviously we need to come to the biggest transparency that I'll admit shocked me, and that was the pay scale is the salaries are public at Buffer, and in the US the mentality is that's forbidden. And that's probably to prevent people from complaining they were discriminated against and legal battles left and right. But it seems to me to be a fantastic solution because I take it, using a standard pay scale saying somebody who's been in the job this long would get this much for this kind of a position.
Yep. It's all like We have, I don't know if you've seen the public salary calculator. It doesn't cover all cases, but it's kind of like, you can put like senior front end engineer, and it will tell you how much you'd earn a buffer. And it's like non-negotiable. That's, if you get hired for a senior position, or maybe an Eng 3 position, Eng 2, like that is what you'll be paid. And I think, I think it's marvelous. Like, it's one I'd known about buffer for ages, and that was one thing that was like I was always really impressed by. Because like at my company, it was at my last job before buffer, it was like no one knew what other people earned. And when I left, I found out that the salaries were all over the place. Like there's no logic. And some people who were a lot less experienced were being paid way more than people who had loads of experience, just because they joined the company at different times and there'd been no adjustments and so on. And it's like, wow, it's really messed up. And we were kind of told we weren't allowed to talk about it. Just like,
you really get the impression that it's not merely forbidden to give that information out, but you're forbidden from even discussing it with your coworkers, which they can't prevent. They really can't stop you from doing. But I'm assuming that from year to year that changes, that it's not locked in for every year.
Yeah, they do like salary. I think it's the Radford job code. So our salaries are checked against that every year. And like this year, I had a bit of a pay rise because senior engineers, like the average pay for senior engineers went up. So my salary went up, which is nice. It's kind of like inflation in a sense, I guess. And another thing like I think is important is in terms of like just equal pay. Like there's no, like you said, there's no discrimination again based on gender or race, and it's equal for everyone. Like I said, no negotiations, which is really nice, and I think really really important to have in place.
Yeah, I'm looking at this calculator right now. It's pretty straightforward. It basically says I am, say, a software engineer 3 living in a city with average cost of living, and then it gives you out a number, which is pretty great, I would say, in terms of like getting an idea at least. But would you say that this is not considering the city and the cost of living for that? There is something that says cost of living, so maybe I'm messing it out.
Yeah, I think the city. I think that's how we calculate it. Is the city that you select there will adjust for cost of living. Like that's why I said it's not. It might not be. You can't. The calculator can't calculate every single option because if your city's not listed there, I think our team has to like do some research. But yeah, I think there's 3 cost of living bands, like high, medium, and low. And then I think I'm in the medium band, for example. And I know some companies do that differently. Like some companies who have the salary calculator in place to have equal pay. Some of those remote companies just pay everyone the same, and some do the location-based pay. A lot of mixed opinions on it, I think.
This is super interesting. I think our listeners would also be very interested in looking at this.
Yeah, definitely.
So at this point, are you a lead or a managing dev, or what position are you currently in?
So I'm a senior 2, which is, I guess, level 4, level 5? One of them, but yeah, senior 2. So I'm kind of like, it's weird. I'm kind of like the mobile teams are really small. So we're only 2 Android, 2 iOS. You could say
that sounds normal.
Yeah, you could say I lead the Android team, but then like some people are like, oh, it's only 2 of you. So it's a bit a bit of a funny one. But yeah, I try and I guess I'm on the Android team and lead that. And also as a senior 2, kind of expected to do things throughout engineering, like not necessarily coding for other teams, but just try and influence things moving forward, whether it's how we do things and mentorship and so on.
Having many times been the lead iOS engineer of a team of me, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
One day you're just an in the trenches programmer, and the next day you're at a meeting with the CTO trying to explain technologies, and it's
Wearing all
whiplash.
the hats.
No, the reason I ask is that when you are in a position of leadership, you are dealing with other engineers. And I wonder, because there's a lot of discussion in Living by the Code about what leadership means and how you view it. And I was just looking for your 30,000 foot view of how you view leadership in that kind of a position.
In such small teams, is that what you mean? Like, yeah, that's a good one. I think like when it comes to like the Android platform and leadership there, it's kind of just, not only focusing on like the things we're doing in the Android team, but also trying to, mentor the other team members, like whether it's one or two people within that Android team. And then also, being that point of communication and contact for, like you said, you were talking to CTO, like we have a similar setup at Buffer, like I'll talk to the CTO at Buffer or talk to other EMs or product to keep things in the loop and keep things moving forward. And that's what I kind of see my role as in the Android team. Like I do a lot of IC work still, like individual contributor work, but keeping the Android team running and keeping, making sure we've got stuff to do and making sure we're up to date and keeping, modern code base and so on. But outside of that, like, I think one of the things I love about Buffer is just being able to do stuff. Like I have a really like just do it attitude, like working on the API or, helping out other teams do stuff. And, like this week I've been working on a library for the front end and back end teams to help improve our analytics tracking and being able to do, like, even though I'm not in those teams, I'm doing that stuff and like no one's saying, oh no, Joe, don't do that, you're on the Android team, like focus on that work. Just about like helping each other and helping other teams move forward. And I really enjoy doing that stuff as well. And I think that's I see that as leadership in a sense as well, like, setting other teams up for success and, setting those little things up and handing them over and driving up momentum to put those things in place.
So I saw, I was reading the book Living by the Code, and I saw that you had quoted, I'm going to quote you yourself. I also like to give people the chance to be challenged, explore problems themselves, and find their own solution. This, I think, is more or less being pointed towards mentorship. So could you like elaborate on this more?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it is related to mentorship. Like I think when, like, I'm a big like people person. I really like helping people, and I think earlier in my career I fell into the trap of like, if someone needed help or an engineer needed help, I'd be like hand holding too much and just like not giving the answers, but like just almost handing answers to problems and like and giving too much help, which I think sometimes might be needed if you're in a more of a mentorship position. But as I've gone through like my career, I've seen the importance of, and also experienced myself, if you solve a problem yourself, maybe you've had a few pointers here and there, solving that problem and not only feeling the satisfaction that you've done that, but also going through that learning process of doing it, I think is really important. And I try and lean into that quite a lot, like during mentorship. Some people say that's more of a coaching thing, but I think it's, as engineers, like we naturally have that ambition to solve problems. So I think engineers can do that stuff. They just sometimes need pointers to get in that right direction. yeah, so I wrote a blog post on this last year. I can't remember what the title was, but yeah, it was kind of, I talked about, rather than giving someone a map, giving them a couple of directions and helping them find their way through it.
I like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know that you also are doing a lot of like apart from mentorship in your current team, also I think you're also publishing a lot of blog posts and obviously giving a lot of conference talks. I don't know, since the pandemic has been around, like how many virtual conferences you've been to, but like in general, you have been giving a lot of talks and everything. So you are kind of like I would say working in every single direction. You have done something related to Google Assistant, and I also saw you have something recently related to Compose Academy. I think that is related to Jetta Compose. I was following that myself, so that's
Nice.
it's pretty good. So yeah, like so, how do you even come up with these like, or maybe it's your interest is just getting forayed into all these different directions?
Yeah, yeah. I just love making stuff and building things. Like, I think when I started my career, I was very heavy on Android. Like still am, but I went very deep on Android and was just focused on Android. Um, After several years working on Android, I think I started to branch out a bit and just, thinking, oh, I realized I just like solving problems and building things that help people solve problems, regardless of whether that's on Android or not. Um, and there's so much tech out there, so many different platforms, like you said, like Google Assistant, and building for the web, maybe even building for iOS, or using another framework on Android like Flutter or so on. I think as you get, the more senior you get and the more experience you get with engineering, like I started to just, see, I don't want to say it's just working with a framework, but you just learn how to build things, and you learn how things work and how things fit together. And if you want to build it on an Android platform, you want to build on iOS, like you still have the fundamentals, and it's just about getting to grips with the way that those things work on those certain platforms. And for me, it was just like that realization, and then just realizing that I could solve problems on whatever I was building for. And yeah, I think as well, like professionally, I think it's important to have an open mind. Things change so quickly. I think we're quite lucky that being around at this time, like with mobile, is and how long mobile has been around. I feel really privileged to be able to experience that. But we never know what the next big thing is, and is Android going to be here in 10 years? I don't know. Like, who knows? No one knows. I hope it is. I really love working with it, but I think it's good to be able to work with different things and have an open mind in that aspect.
So, of course, the question I have now is there a specific technology that you really love playing in right now? Or is there a specific technology you'd really like to be playing in right now?
So I'm actually really enjoying GraphQL at the moment. So you mentioned the Compose Academy site, and I built that with GraphQL, the API, and I've been doing some GraphQL stuff at work, and I'm just really love working with it. It's weird because it's not like, I feel like it's not like a groundbreaking thing. It's not like anything that's like out of this world, but it's just, I think for me, it's just a bit of a change and something new and something fresh to be playing with. So that's one thing. And another thing, going to put a second one in there, is just hardware stuff. I've really always loved working with hardware, and like Raspberry Pi and Arduino.
Mm-hmm.
Have done for years. I don't really know what I'm doing. Like I don't have any. I completely messed up my electronics course at college, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I really enjoy it, and I like getting away from the screen. Obviously, you have to do some coding, but I like getting away from a screen and just tinkering with components and plugging things in and making stuff happen. So I really really enjoy that stuff.
I'm always fine right up until I hit capacitors, and then I get very, very confused.
It's further than me, to be honest. But yeah, I just worry, like, am I going to start a fire? Is something going to blow up? But yeah, it could be scary stuff.
Yeah, talking about all this hardware stuff, I see that you built a project called Chord Assist. Would you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so Chord Assist was a project. Was it last year or the year before? Last year is just like a blur. So I think it was the year before last year. So yeah, it was a guitar, and it was, where is it? I'll say for there. It's built using Google Assistant, and it was a guitar built for blind, deaf, and mute people.
Ooh.
So you could essentially talk to the guitar, and you could ask it how to play a chord, and then depending on what you had turned on, the guitar would either speak out the instructions, display the instructions on the screen, or read them on the braille reader on the bottom of the guitar. And then if the person isn't able to speak, also had buttons to be able to select the chord that you wanted to learn. So it was just kind of just like an experiment. So my mum has an eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which is essentially your eye cells gradually die over time, and you can end up with like tunnel vision. And my nan had it as well, and I don't think I have it, like touch wood. I think it would have been picked up by now in an eye test. But that started to get me thinking, like, if I had that condition, like how would my life have been impacted, and what things might I not have been able to do if that I have done in my life. And I play a lot of music, and that seemed like a natural thing for me. I was like, wow, like if I was blind, or if I had this condition when I was younger, like, you know, learning guitar or having access to music could have looked very, very different for me. So I started to think of ways that maybe I could bring my love of guitar and technology together. So I built the guitar, and yeah, it was good. It was a good project. It works. I haven't really done anything else with it. Like, I made a video of Google. Google came over and shot a video in my house, which was really fun, and talked about it at conferences. But yeah, I planned, like, last year I was hoping to get some people to test it and like to see if it could help people, like get some real users. But 2020 being 2020 kind of put a spanner in that wrench. So
I remember it was also nominated for something, I think Webby Awards or something.
Yeah. It didn't win a Webby Award. It came, was it fourth? It just missed bronze, I think. But it won a Lovey Award, which is like the sister company of the Webby Awards. So I'm happy with that. I'll take it.
I find that I really wish more engineers had someone in their life or themselves that needed an assistive technology, because until you've actually run into what a person goes through, you really don't necessarily have an appreciation for the assistive stack that is there in Android and is there in iOS. But people just tend to go, well, I guess they give it lip service rather than actually thinking about how it can best assist their end users.
Yeah, it's like there was that video on Twitter towards the end of last year of I think it was a girl who was using TalkBack on iOS to view her Twitter feed, and it was really fast, and I remember it all went like viral because people like couldn't believe it. And that, I think that proves what you just said, like until you've seen this technology in use, or you know someone who's experienced those kind of things, like you're just unaware of it. And I think that's, yeah, I think there could definitely be more education in that thing as well. Like if people, you know, are aware of that stuff, like we know about it, and so on, like educating more people about those things and like trying to make it more of a standard.
Mm-hmm.
It's always interesting for me to see how we as engineers could impact the life of other people, considering we look at these problems as our own, right? So like you saw that particular situation and said, like, what if I was in this situation? And then you build this out. I think as engineers, if all of us kind of focused on that, that would definitely bring at least something that's good for people, those who cannot actually experience the world as we do. Right?
Yeah.
That would something be very good to see.
Yeah, and like products that we build that are assistive technology, like most of the time they end up being used by people who don't need assistive technology. Like the guitar could be used for that, and I could use it. And we look at things like, I don't know, like the Roomba, the Hoover that moves around the floor. Like I think that was originally designed as an assistive tool, and most people I know who own them don't need that assistive technology.
No, my spouse is hard of hearing, and when the Apple Watch first released, and they started talking about the fact that every audio sound would also have a haptic physical click that the user could wear, I realized this was a electronic tool that she would be able to profit from, and she would be able to use as much as anybody who could hear it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it shows that we need these things, and everyone will benefit from them if the thought is put in there.
I have this question from a very long time. I would say that you have been covering all these technologies, like you have been like doing things in the Google Assistant domain, Flutter, Kotlin multi-platform, Compose, and everything. How do you like actually keep up with all of this? Like it feels like there's way too much information that you are processing. And this is a question that I probably also have heard online from other people who follow you and who probably also follow me. And they would be like, yeah, so Joe has published another blog post, but like he's also published another thing at the same time, or maybe at like a span of like 2 days or 3 days. How do you do that? Like, how is that happening? Some trick, some magic that you have.
Yeah, I just get help, pay people to do it for me. No, no, yeah, it's a good one. I think it's definitely hasn't been as much like this year. I think I've definitely, with everything going on, I've definitely noticed a dip of my energy. But I think it's just like I said before, like just curious mind. I like dipping into different things, and when I'm on something, I'm quite focused. So if I start a blog post, or I start playing with technology, or start a new project, then I'm quite focused on that and manage just to get heads down and get it done. Like I mentioned about my work day being quite structured, and my time outside of work, I try and structure quite a lot as well to give me the time to do these things. Like I do get up really early, but I get up at like 4:45, 5 in the morning, because it's quiet, no one's up, and I just do stuff that I want to do, like whether it's writing and learning new stuff. But then I go to bed early as well. I don't want to set that precedence of, oh yeah, no one needs to sleep. I go to bed at like 9:30, so I still get my 8 hours sleep. But like, I think that for me, that morning time is like golden, because there's no disturbances. It's so quiet. Like I just get on with my stuff and do it. So that's like that's what works for me. And I think that's how I managed to be productive, is just having a structure and focus as well. Like it's easy to get distracted and get pulled into other things outside of, those goals that I have.
Yeah, I think I have the problem of getting distracted a lot. I think I'm going to benefit from this. I'm going to try.
Yeah, but I think that's been the struggle for me. Like when I mentioned about the dip of energy, like the last year, is, with everything happening, naturally those are distractions, and they're distractions which are hard to avoid, I think. So kind of been experiencing that as well a bit.
I actually, one of the things that you talk about in the chapter is the hiring process and hiring practices. And there are so many different things that engineers find themselves facing, whether it be whiteboard coding or take-home exercises. How do you feel about this, and what do you think works best?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Personally, not a fan of, well, I don't know, I was going to say not a fan of whiteboarding, but I think it depends what the whiteboarding is. Like when I say whiteboarding, I mean like algorithms. Like unless a company is using those things, like I don't agree that they are good interview practices.
No merge sort?
Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like,
I actually had an interview where they said, which sort would you use? And I'm like, well, I'll be honest here. I know there are algorithms for each of these sorts, and it depends entirely on what your data set is, but I'll be glad to show you the Wikipedia article, which illustrates and breaks down those algorithms. And that's what I'll go to first. And he was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, he was happy with the fact that I had a source of knowledge to call from and knew how to use it.
wow. Well, that's good. I think I'd be too scared to
please.
try that.
Yeah. I always tell people,
I wouldn't try.
Use that.
I've heard some people say, "Oh, I'd use the sort function in Kotlin or something," which, if it works, I think with whiteboarding, I actually would really, and have done this a few times in interviews, is like when I've been asked to, structure a feature, or I don't know, like if I was building something, how I'd modularize it or how I'd organize it. Like, I really enjoy that stuff, and I'd happily do that on a whiteboard, because that's stuff we do, and those are the problems we solve. So I'm all in for that. In a remote environment, I guess you could still do that somehow, just like talking through it. Having a whiteboard set up might be a bit harder. But I'm sure there's ways around it. In terms of like take home and I guess pairing, like take home exercises, I think are interesting. Like, I agree with them, and I think they're good ways of seeing what people can do, but I think they're very limited, because it's, you could say, oh, build this screen or do this screen, but that only tells you that person can do that, and it doesn't show you much thinking process, and it doesn't show you maybe how that person works or what it's like to work with them. Like, I personally, if I had the choice between doing a take home or pairing with a developer at the company for an hour or so, I'd pick the pairing, because I can see what it's like personally as a candidate to work with someone on that team, and they can see what I'm like. You can talk about problems, and you can maybe work on an actual feature that is being built, which I think that's fair. And I think that's as well more time box. Like, take home is, with take homes, you ask, it is sometimes quite a big ask, because people are naturally going to spend more time than you tell them. Like, if someone said to me, oh, here's a take home exercise, don't spend more than 4 hours, I probably would spend more than 4 hours, because I want to get it right, and I'd want to do a good job, because especially if I want the job, like, I want to make sure I'm doing my best work, and I'd likely spend more than that time. And you're kind of taking people's time. And I know some places pay people for those take homes, but it's easy to get carried away, and sometimes they can be bigger projects than they need to be. So I think they work. I think they can be limited somewhat.
I have got to find out where you're applying to get one of those take homes that they pay you for.
Yeah, there's a few companies, that reimburse you for it. It's not bad money either.
But no, I mean, it's always going to run the gamut. I've had good whiteboard coding. I've had bad whiteboard coding, good take homes, bad take homes. Haven't done much in pair programming. I did have one person hand me a piece of paper and say, write malloc. And my response to them was, why would I want to do that? It's already in there and optimized for the operating system.
Yeah, that's stuff that I think is like, what's the point? Like,
it's like, that's not what you're hiring me for.
And I know these companies sometimes say like, oh, it doesn't matter if you get it wrong, we just want to see your thinking process. But that's like, it's quite a big ask, and that's going to set anyone off. Like, that's going to make me so like too nervous to even like think straight.
Yeah. And it's not a real world example. I mean, one of the biggest problems with the whiteboarding is you're not typically asked to code in front of one or two people with no real preparation under time duress.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of companies who are against that kind of stuff. And there is, I can't remember what it's called, but there's like it's not called anti-whiteboard pledge, but I'm just going to call it that because I don't know the actual name. But there's GitHub repositories where companies can submit themselves to say like, we don't do whiteboarding tests for our interviews, and Buffer is on that list. And that could be a good resource for people who maybe are looking for jobs and don't want to have to go through that. But yeah,
does Buffer do pair programming, or is Buffer also doing like take-home tasks, considering Android, let's say?
Yeah, we do a take-home exercise. It's quite a small exercise, and then like we keep the scope of it really small so that it's not going to be too much time. And then we have an interview after that to talk through it and ask further questions, like if you're going to do this, how would you do that, or what would happen here, and just to dive in a bit more into like domain knowledge around Android. Yeah, but I'd like to in future, like whenever we hire again, I'd like to try the pairing stuff. Obviously, that the only thing with that and Buffer is it's not very asynchronous. So like I guess it's not normal. It's not a thing we do normally at work anyway. Like we do pair, but it's not like a requirement. But for an interviewing, I'd like to try it and see what it's like. I paired when I've interviewed at other companies previously. I've done a couple of pairing sessions, and the ones that were done properly were nice. I did do one where the developer just sat there and watched me, and it was really awkward. It wasn't pairing. It was like, yeah, it was just like I was working on my own. So
I've been in those interviews. They're like, you don't want to be there. Like you just feel nervous, and at the same time, you just don't want to be in that interview yourself. Even if you know something, you're like, yeah. I don't know, like, why are you looking at me? I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. Like, why are you looking at? Yeah,
and I'll do it and come back in 10 minutes.
Maybe monitor me somewhere, but like just sitting next to me is spooky, I would say. You can't focus. You have all of that thing. But I've also seen some companies that give like this open-ended timeline for completing a take-home task or something. So like, for example, they will give you 7 days. And then people overdo their task. Like they would like say, for example, if the idea is to build something super small, they'll be like, oh, I also implemented this big feature because I thought I could, just so that they could stand out from the rest of the candidates. And that's something that's kind of like happening at some companies, but I wouldn't say it's a norm, but I've definitely, I think I applied at one company which had this, and I was like, can you just like give me like a set time and not like 7 days? It just sounds super weird. It's not a 7-day task, or is it a 7-day task? That was my question. Is it so big? And they were like, okay, so yeah, give us the timeline.
Yeah, that's why we try, and when we've done our take homes is we give like essentially a specification like that has just a few tasks on it, and there's no stretch goals. There's no, if they do things outside of the scope, it's not like they don't get any extra points essentially. It's just do the spec, and there's a couple of ways to do it, and that's kind of it.
That's a good take.
Which I think,
one particular thing that you mentioned that I have actually never quite thought about is that when you said it's the async pairing process for interviews, would you say that pairing is actually also happening in your async day-to-day activity?
So me and my colleague, we have some overlap. We do sometimes pair, like if sometimes we've got mainly on bugs, like when there's tricky things and we just want to work on something together, or just if there's something we're not sure the best way to do it, we might pair on it and work it out together. Sometimes we use a little tool called Loom, and it's like a little video recording. It records your screen and your webcam, and you can talk. And we use that quite a lot. So mainly on like, we leave the videos in Slack or on pull requests, like to talk through things and maybe ask someone else their opinion on something, like, oh, hey, I've done this, but I'm not sure if this is the best way, like, and just give an explanation. And that's really nice because you get that FaceTime, and sometimes it's a lot easier than just writing a bunch of text, and you could talk for a problem. So whilst that's not pairing as such, it's just an async way of communicating with each other.
Yeah, I was thinking more or less that is when you go into a fully remote situation, does pairing as a interview exercise even hold true, because it's not related to your job anymore as much. Yeah. So Like, I guess in that sense, your take home is what you would prefer more on that.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I said like when I was saying about does it make sense to do the remote because it's the remote pairing because it's not something we'd do at work anyway. I guess it gives you a good idea of how someone thinks and stuff, but then would you get any more benefit from the other interview? Yeah. But yeah, another thing we do in the interview I just remembered was part of the interview process is a pull request review. So we have a repository for the take home task, and then also in that repository, I've opened a pull request. It's just a simple, like, I don't know, I can't remember what I did, but it was like a simple feature, maybe like 4 file changes. And I purposely like not trying to catch people out, but just maybe I made changes where there was a couple of ways to change things, and maybe I hadn't done the best way of doing it. Just to see, not to see what people would pick out, but just to see how they communicate, like how they review pull requests, like what their how they communicate things and how they approach things, and just to see if they like have like a good communication skills there, which I think again is important in a remote environment. And that was the first time we did that pull request review thing, which it was quite beneficial. Like no one did badly, but it was just nice to see like what it would be like to be working with that person within GitHub.
I've never heard of this, but I think it sounds super nice. I wish I applied to companies that did this. Would be so much nice, because that's something that relates to your day-to-day activity as an engineer. I think most of our time is spent in doing code reviews while we work on a very small feature. But then you also have to do this code review, right? So I've never heard of this, so I'm very happy that I know this now. This is something that maybe I should try with some other candidate or something, just to see how it works and how good that is. Yeah,
and it's not like a big task. It's just a nice small thing, like an additional task on top of the take home. Would love to hear if you get to try it. Would love to hear how it goes.
I'm thrilled to hear that your pull request is only 4 files. I've dealt with pull requests where it's like 45 files, and the Git message check-in says changed stuff.
Maybe if we're like hiring like a senior engineer, I'll do that next time. Do like a massive pull request.
45 files, refactor everything in one shot.
Yep. Convert everything to Flutter. Good luck.
You have had this super long journey, I would say, now, like jumping from being a software engineer now, like you're a senior software engineer, I think, based on the levels you have. Is there anything that you wish that you knew upfront that you have now maybe learned, or you from your experience, you can talk about that?
Yes. So I think a big thing for me is like when I remember at my first company, when I was getting into Android and I started doing community work, I was very like worried of other people's opinions in the community of like the stuff I was producing, which I think is a common thing. Like it's one of the things that held me back from writing blog posts and doing talks originally. Like caring too much about, oh, what if I've done this wrong, or what if someone points this thing out to me that I've done wrong, and then I look bad and it looks like I don't know what I'm doing. I think it's kind of like the imposter syndrome kind of thing, and I think that held me back a bit for some time. But when I did get to sharing stuff, like nothing bad happened, and I think I lost so much time worrying about it and overthinking it that it should have just been getting on with it and writing stuff and sharing stuff and learning things that way. I think that's one of the things I wish I would had been able to stop myself from doing, but that's easier said than done. I think as well, like, you know, when again I guess it's related to imposter syndrome and thinking that maybe you don't know everything, is like you don't have to know everything. Like I used to want to, you know, when it sounds kind of a bit rich, because I know you said before about me doing a lot of posts and writing about stuff when it first comes out. And I think I used to put myself under a lot of pressure to have to know everything. Like when there was anything new Android, I'd be reading about it, writing about it, making something with it. And then like forgetting about it a few months later because I had no use for it. And a good example of this is Firebase remote config. Like it came out, I remember it was announced. I was like, oh, I need to learn about that. That's like a new thing. I have to know how it works, have to know how to use it. I made a course on it for Caster.io. And then I didn't use Firebase remote config for like 2 years. I came to use it at work and I had no idea how it worked. I'd completely forgotten everything. It was like I was learning it again. And I remember when that time came around, and I was like, I remember when I spent so much time on this library and I had no use for it at the time other than making a course. And I was so worried about knowing it and sharing stuff about it when really I didn't need to. And I think I'd done that with a lot of things in Android and tech. Is like learning stuff for the sake of it, just for learning's sake, and then not serving me any purpose. Which I think is good to learn things and good to want to learn things, but knowing, like having focus. I wish I had more focus on the things that were useful to me and the things that I'd benefit from. I definitely think that would have been really helpful for me earlier on in my career, and I think I've got better at that. Like I still dip into different things here and there and explore different technologies, but like I said before, like removing those distractions and having focus on the things that I actually enjoy learning about and the things that I think are important to me.
I want to change gears entirely out of the world of code for a while.
Yeah, that's good.
We talked about the fact that you did guitar chord, which is still programming and developing. What is fun that does not involve technology for you?
Oh, that's a good one. So I mentioned music. I love playing music. I used to play in a lot of bands when I was growing up and when I was at university. I don't play in any bands at the moment, obviously, because we can't meet people. But yeah, I play a lot of guitar in my spare time. I mainly play bass, but I originally started off with electric guitar, and I've got an electric guitar still. And yeah, like I spent quite a lot of time on it. I fell out of it for about about a year. I didn't really play much guitar, and then last year I picked it up again, bought myself a new guitar, and I bought myself like a little effects pad, an amp, a guitar amp pro simulator. So it's like a little box, and it's like a digital thing, and you can create guitar amps on there and effects, and just to have a play around. And I really, yeah, guitar for me is just, and music is just really, really nice creative outlet. Like I love just playing along to other songs and writing my own things and just having a bit of a noodle around. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me outside of code. And I know I linked that back into technology somehow, but it was still didn't ruin it for me.
It's a weakness. People have to do it.
Yeah.
So are you sheltering solo? Do you have someone or a pet or anything to keep you going?
Yeah. So I have a partner, and she's working from home as well. She we live together, and yeah, she's working from home now. And I have a pet, have a dog, Roxy. She's the boss of the house. a little staffy. She's 5 years old, and we've had her for about 2.5 years. But yeah, she's like my life. So yeah.
Now, go ahead.
Haven't been able to link her and technology yet. I'm working on it somehow.
Some digital dog collar or something.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There'll be an idea sooner or later.
See, I get to look in on Nishant's notes because he gets into everything, and I don't know where he digs some of this stuff up. We're supposed to bring up Sea Shepherd UK.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Sea Shepherd UK. Yeah.
What is Sea Shepherd UK?
So Sea Shepherd is a marine conservation organization / charity, and they're quite big globally. And basically what they do is try and prevent like illegal fishing. There's a lot of concern in the world at the moment with climate change, and a big cause of that is the oceans, and how we're losing so much of our ocean life, which contributes greatly to climate change. So Sea Shepherd have always been, for years, been fighting marine conservation, like illegal fishing, illegal whaling, anything to do, basically any illegal activities to do with the ocean, like Sea Shepherd are there. They're involved earlier on as well in like seal clubbing and stuff, and anti-seal clubbing, not actually the seal clubbing. But the thing that I love about Sea Shepherd is, and the reason why I wanted to get involved with them, was just their direct action. Like they don't spend any money on advertising or any money on like protests or any kind of marketing at all. Any money they get, they put towards being out there on the front line in the oceans and having a direct impact on things, which I think is great. And they've been able to build up such a name without all that marketing and so on.
And you've run a marathon as a result.
Yeah, so I decided to run a marathon in a whale costume.
In a whale costume.
Yeah, that was it was good fun. I wouldn't do it again, but it was really good fun. This was before I joined as a volunteer, and I'd followed Sea Shepherd for years, and I thought, I'm going to raise some money this time. I run a lot outside of work, and I'd done a few running events, and this time I was like, I'm going to raise some money. I'm going to raise some money for Sea Shepherd. And I thought, like, I've asked friends for money before, so I need to mix this up a bit. I need to do something different. And I just came across this whale costume, and I remember looking at my laptop thinking, like, that's a stupid idea, Joe. Like, don't do that. But yeah, I got it. It was quite a big costume, but it was really fun. I remember, like, it was hard, but people loved it. Like, people were like shouting stuff at the whale, and people were talking about it on like the megaphone and the speakers, and it was really, really enjoyable. So yeah, I raised, can't remember how much it was only like, I think it's like £800, which is like just over $1,000.
That's nothing. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. That's really that's a really impressive amount.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It was good fun, and I'd love to do fundraising like that again in future, maybe a different way. but yeah.
To be honest, I think I started following you once I saw that picture.
Oh, nice.
Not for the Android stuff, not for tech.
just for the whale costume. But yeah, trying to think of anything else Sea Shepherd related. But yeah, I'm part of the UK volunteer organization. So what we do is like we do like organized beach cleans and so on, and down in Brighton, because we get a lot of mess there, and a lot of that ends up in the ocean. There are opportunities to go on to campaigns, so actually to go out into the ocean. There was a campaign year before last in the Faroe Islands, where there's a lot of whaling that happens, and some of my friends went there, and I think one of my goals in future is to go on a campaign and be a part of that. So maybe when I take a sabbatical or something, I want to do that. That's
really great. Joe, this has been an amazing sit down and an amazing episode. I really want to thank you for joining us this episode. It's been really informative. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. It's been really great.
And do not forget to check out Joe's chapter in Living by the Code. Some really great books that Joe recommends, including The Pragmatic Programmer, which is a stunning piece of literature that is worth reading over and over again. You can find Joe on Twitter and on Medium at Hi There Joe, which I just think is the greatest Twitter handle. That's HITHERE JOE. Hi There Joe. You can find Nishant, of course, at Nisrules, Nisrulz. I'm Podcast Dru. Our next episode, we're going to have Ty Smith on the show. And he is the team lead and has had many manager roles at a lot of unicorn startups like Uber and Twitter and Evernote. And then after that episode, 2 weeks later, we're going to have Corey Lee Ladislaw on the show. And as always, since we record about 2 weeks before we actually get the shows out, if you have any questions for Corey, please send them to podcast@raywenderlich.com. Again, thank you, Joe. Nishant, thank you as always for being on the show. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with our next episode. And until then, Ray, back to you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the raywenderlich.com podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to leave a rating on iTunes. See you next time.